Welcome to our channel, the channel where real stories meet raw truth. Here, we shine a light on the battles we fought, the voices they tried to silence, and the victories they never saw coming. These aren't just stories. They're a testament of strength, dignity, and the power of rising when the world expects you to fall. Before we dive in, make sure to subscribe to our channel. Tap the like button and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Your support helps us keep bringing you interesting stories that deserves to be heard. Now, let's get into today's story. They refused him a seat in first class. Then the pilot stepped out and saluted him. The terminal buzzed like a BI Flight 268 to Atlanta delayed again. Passengers groaned in frustration, rolling their bags from gate C-47. To C-22, the intercom crackled above the noise. But amid the chaos, one man didn't flinch. He sat perfectly still like a stone, unmoved by the tide. 73-year-old Colonel Isaiah Freeman, retired Air Force, 3 Medals of Valor, 2 Purple Hearts, countless scars seen, and unseen, dress in a modest gray suit, shoes polished, so bright they reflected the terminal. Light's hands resting gently on his lap. No visible rank, no declarations of heroism, no medals pinned to his chest. Just a quiet dignity that spoke louder than brass and stripes. He had waited before he could wait again, through war and storms and nights when the sky fell down in fire. This wasn't new, this wasn't hard. When the boarding finally resumed, Isaiah stood up slow and steady. His knees creaked, but his posture never wavered. He approached the gate desk with his boarding pass in hand. Seat 3, a first class, a hard-earned upgrade from decades of loyalty and countless flights. But the young gate agent barely glanced up, blonde hair, tied tight, eyes fixed on her monitor. She didn't see the man, she saw only the assumption. "Sir, economy boarding is over there," she said, waving him off. Without a smile, Isaiah spoke calmly. "I believe there's a mistake, ma'am. This is seat 3, a first class." Her eyes narrowed, her brows furrowed. As if the very possibility offended her, she took the pass, squinted at, frowned again. "You're sure this is yours?" The disbelief in her voice hit like a slap. Not overt hostility, just that sour taste of assumed hierarchy, as if a black man in a press suit surely couldn't belong where champagne flowed and pillows fluffed. "Please step aside, sir. We need to finish priority boarding her." Voice clipped, her tone final, and the whispers started behind him, little murmurs like embers catching wind. "What's he doing up here?" "Maybe he's confused. Probably try his luck." A man in a tailored navy suit behind him chuckled. "Maybe you want a raffle or something." A woman 2 rows back muttered louder, "He probably doesn't even know how to work the seatbelt in first class." Isaiah said nothing, didn't flinch, didn't explain. He'd been misunderstood before, mislabeled, underestimated. And still he rose, still he flew higher than those who clipped their own wings with ignorance. He stepped back, folded his hands, and weighted his. Silence was forged in the fires of combat. It wasn't weakness, it was control. 15 minutes passed, and 20 of the crowd-thinned first-class passengers strolled by without glancing at him. But when a different gate agent took over, she checked the list again. Her eyes scanned the manifest, and then widened in surprise. "Oh, Mr. Freeman, I apologize. Please go right ahead, sir." The earlier gate agent watched from a distance, her mouth parted slightly. But she said nothing as Isaiah walked down the jet bridge slow, but proud, one step at a time, entering a space that still questioned his presence. With every polished surface and designer bag, he reached the cabin door, where a flight attendant looked up. Her eyes swept over him, and her lips tightened. "Sir, first class is rows 1. To 3, you're probably further back." Isaiah handed her the same pass, wordless. She took it, read it, blinked once, then handed it back with stiff nod. No apology, no smile, just silent correction. As he approached seat 1A, the man in 1B looked up from his briefcase, frowned with visible annoyance, and scooted his things further onto the shared armrest figures. He muttered under his breath, but Isaiah didn't respond. He placed his bag in the overhead bin carefully, like a soldier placing gear for one more mission. He sat down, adjusted his jacket, looked out the window, and let the silence embrace him again. He closed his eyes, and for a moment the present disappeared, replaced by rotors spinning in. Dust heat waves rising off the horizon, screams over radio static. Afghanistan, 1983, a mission gone. Sideways, an ambush, a helicopter spiraling, one engine down, one arm bleeding. He landed it anyway, blind, bruised, but breathing. 2 crew members lived that day because of him. The Army never threw parades for moments like that. But he didn't need one. He had his survival, and the sound of lives saved instead of lost. The president returned with the ding of the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your Captain Michael Langley. Welcome aboard Flight 268 to Atlanta. We'll be pushing back shortly." Isaiah's eyes opened slowly, a name echoing in his mind like a note from a forgotten song. Michael Langley. He remembered that name not from the battlefield, but from a dusty high school gymnasium 20-something years ago. A boy in REC, too smart, too anxious, too invisible, the kind of kid who was bullied more than. Befriended Isaiah had been visiting cadet programs back, then mentoring the ones who got ignored. Michael had stood in the corner after drills, quiet, shoulders hunched, as if waiting for the world to strike again. Isaiah had pulled him aside, said, "You don't need anyone's permission to fly, son, just wind and faith." He remembered that line clearly because it was the same one someone once told him when no one else believed in him. As the plane began to taxi, another announcement broke through the calm. "Flight attendants, please hold boarding doors for a moment." Confusion rippled to the cabin. Heads turned. The flight was full. Everyone was seated while the delay, but then the cockpit door swung open, and a tall black man in pilot blues stepped out. Purposeful eyes scanning the cabin rose until they landed on Isaiah. The air shifted, the energy changed. "Passengers," whispered the earlier gate agent, peered in from the gallier, face draining color like a page losing ink. And then the pilot walked straight down the aisle, stopped in front of seat 1A, and saluted, a sharp, crisp movement that silenced the cabin, the kind of salute that came not from duty, but from deep, unshakable respect. "Ladies and gentlemen, before we take off, I need to recognize someone very important sitting right here in seat 1A is Colonel Isaiah Freeman. He doesn't wear his medals, he doesn't ask for applause, but he's the reason I ever flew a plane in the first place." A hush fell over the cabin like oxygen had paused. The pilot's voice didn't waver. "When I was a scared kid with no future, this man told me I could fly. He gave me belief when no one else would. He looked at a broken boy and saw a pilot, and I've carried those words with me every time I've taken off today. I finally get to thank him properly." He extended his hand. Isaiah stood slowly, his bones aching, but his spirit rising. They shook hands and embraced, and the pilot whispered, "You told me I just needed wind and faith. I found both because of you." Isaiah's voice cracked for the first time in a long time. "You soar higher than I ever did, son." The pilot turned to the passengers. "You're not just flying with a veteran. Today you're flying with a hero." And like a wave crashing into shore, the cabin erupted in applause, full-throated hands, clapping not out of politeness, but out of awakening. The flight attendants clapped the man. In one beat, clapped slowly, then faster, his eyes wide with something that looked like regret and awe. When Isaiah sat down again, the silence returned, but this time it was sacred, not suspicious. Something had shifted, not just in the air, but in every heart on that plane. The gate agent who once dismissed him now stood at the cabin door, blinking back tears. The pilot returned to the cockpit, but left behind the cabin, transformed the flight, lifted into the sky. But the moment remained grounded in memory and meaning. A passenger had filmed the whole thing, uploaded it before the wheels touched down in Atlanta, and by the time they landed, the video had gone viral. Millions watched as a nation remembered what quiet heroism looked like. "Pilot honors black veteran, denied seat in first class." The headlines read, news anchors cried, veterans saluted, schools showed the clip as a lesson on humility and courage. Within 72 hours, a scholarship fund was launched in Colonel Freeman's name aimed at supporting underrepresented youth entering aviation programs. Messages flooded in from pilots, students, parents, strangers who had never known his name but now would never forget it. The airline issued a formal apology, retrained his entire customer-facing staff on bias and representation. The original gate agent met Isaiah at the door on his next flight with an apology deeper than words. "I'm sorry, Colonel Freeman. I judge you by the surface. I never should have." He smiled gently and said, "Just see, better next time." And she did. Every time he flew again, she made sure he boarded first. A man in seat 1B who had scoffed mailed him a letter months later. "I misjudge you, and I will teach my son not to repeat that mistake. Your story opened my eyes." As for Captain Michael Langley, he never flew again without a photo of Isaiah taped to his cockpit panel. Just below the compass, a reminder that real heroes don't always wear capes. Sometimes they carry silence, sometimes they walk alone, sometimes they wait 30 years for the world to finally see them. But when it does, it sees a man who didn't just earn his seat, he built the runway. Because they refused him a seat in first class, not knowing he had already earned his wings, not knowing the cockpit once whispered prayers for men like him to lead, not knowing the flight. They doubted him all was made possible by his service, by his sacrifice, by his spirit. They refused him a seat in first class until the pilot stepped out and saluted him, until the silence gave way to recognition, until justice stood tall in aisle 1 and saluted back. Because some seats are taken and some are earned, but Colonel Isaiah Freeman wasn't just a passenger. He was the reason that flight, every flight, could fly. Thank you for watching today's story. If this moved you, inspired you, or reminded you of your own worth, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Black Struggles. And let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Your voice matters here.